The civil case against the British metal music group Judas Priest, brought by the family members of the two teenagers who shot themselves, brought about the question, was it possible that subliminal messages on a record album induced two young men to shoot themselves? On December 23, 1985, 18-year-old Raymond Belknap and 21-year-old James Vance had spent several hours drinking beer, smoking marijuana, and listening to Judas Priest music in Belknap's home. At some point, the two men had decided to enter a suicide pact. They had taken a sawed-off shotgun to a children's playground. Belknap was the first one to take the gun to his throat, and he pulled the trigger, dying instantly. Vance was the second one to take the shotgun and put it under his chin, moving at the last moment. He ended up blowing off the lower portion of his face, and he went through 13 separate surgeries attempting to reconstruct a new nose, and 2 surgeries to implant a bone where his chin once was. The judge who presided over the case would later describe the results of Vance's attempted suicide as the most horrible, disfiguring injury that the court has ever observed. With the number of violent crimes committed by teenagers that have received media attention, with the most well-known being the Columbine High School shooting and the Washington sniper attack, it creates a question of why exactly do teenagers and young adults commit these acts? They can relate to violent video games, TV programs, music lyrics, and movies. Even going through such a large amount of surgery and incurring over $400,000 in medical expenses, Vance's still remained horribly disfigured. He survived the shooting and became a father, but he died 3 years later on November 24th, 1988, from an overdose that was believed to be caused by implications stemming from his injuries and the use of prescription medications. Sometime after Belknap and Vance had left to carry out the suicide pact, Belknap's mother had went into her son's room to see the remnants of drinking, smoking, and the record album. The record album was entitled Stained Glass by Judas Priest. One of the songs in the album was Heroes End and Saints in Here, and the other one was called Also Better by You, Better Than Me, which could lead to answers as to why the boys shot themselves. At this point, the mother had thrown away the beer cans, flushed the marijuana down the toilet, and called the police because she didn't know where her son was or what happened to him. When Vance was interviewed by the police the next day, he told him that he tried to commit suicide because his life sucks, but he didn't mention anything about the suicide pact. However, over the next 2 years, both families believed that there was another reason for the suicide pact, and there was a letter written actually for the mother that night saying, there was no doubt, no second thought in my mind that I was going to pull the trigger even though I didn't want to die. So later on, both families filed a lawsuit against the band, and the lawsuit was sought to recover money from the record company to reimburse medical expenses related to the treatment of Vance's reviewed injuries, to compensate the families for the deaths of both young men, and to support the child that Vance fathered following his suicide attempt but prior to his death in 1988. The band actually denied placing any subliminal messages in the album. The leader of the band, Rob Halford, had said, "In my opinion, if you do, which we did, put a backward message on a record, it is protected by the First Amendment. It's freedom of speech." He also believed that the deaths were due to a combination of factors, including substance abuse, lack of proper care and guidance in the family, and long-standing emotional problems. One of the legal issues was whether subliminal messages would be considered freedom of speech protected under the First Amendment. Regular lyrics are musical recordings considered a form of artistic expression and have the First Amendment protection, unlike subliminal messages. They are different and have no purpose and may constitute an unwarranted invasion of privacy that have been cited from other cases involving allegations of subliminal influences from heavy metal artists. The second legal issue is if Judas Priest did place subliminal messages, do it on the recording Better by You, Better Than Me. The third and final key issue is that if the subliminal messages are there, can they cause a person to commit an act of suicide? In the court, the judge Jerry Whitehead of Nevada disagreed that subliminal messages were protected by the First Amendment. It does not communicate by any info, and that other people have the right to free to watch unwanted speech. But yet, the key issue of the court was whether subliminal messages in Judas Priest's record caused the deaths of Vance and Belknap. After listening to the sound in open court and in private, it was concluded by the judge that even though the phrase could be heard in the song, it was due to chance combination of sounds rather than the intentional speech. Dr. Chevron testified for the parents that subliminal info was received by individuals at a level meaning that the person was unaware that the info had been received. His research supported that people react to subliminal messages and that messages can affect a person's behavior, emotion, and health. Krakens conducted research on subliminal messaging on behalf of Judas Priest and found that they were inessential in influencing behavior, but it was noted that he was not clinically trained, like Dr. Chevron, to diagnose mental disorders. Timothy Moore also testified that the flaws that existed in many of the studies on subliminal messaging and that the influence of these messages have on the human behavior. A cognitive psychologist, Dr. Don Reed from the University of Lethbridge, testified for the defense that the people comprehend and retain reverse speech. This is an issue related to the claim by plaintiffs that backward messaging contained in the Stained Glass album. Yet there were other factors in place that made both of these individuals high risk for suicide. Vance had a learning disability and dropped out his sophomore year of high school, and Belknap dropped out of his junior year, and they both were expelled for defying authority and have a history of violent behavior. There was an extensive substance abuse problem for both Vance and Belknap for marijuana, alcohol, and cocaine. Overall, he believed that due to the combination of factors precipitated the suicidal behavior of Vance and Belknap, and none of the evidence pointed to a specific legal or proximate cause. Even though they were unsuccessful in demonstrating that the music was the blame for this case, it left a door open for subliminal messaging, saying how it really can affect people, yet even though there is some controversy on subliminal messaging and if it actually does affect people or not. But from the research from the clinical psychologist that was put on the stand, it tends to affect people. And even though Belknap and Vance's family suffered the most, it is important to show that there are a wide range of factors for suicide, that there's not necessarily just one factor or one cause for that.